Hello and welcome to the Constellation League Warhammer podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Scott,
And I'm Paul.
and today we're going to be talking about the GTA 40K Fall Open tournament that I went to over the weekend.
Hmm.
And this was the first GT I've been to. This was the first 2-day event that I've been to. This was, I'll put it lightly and say that this was an experience.
Right.
This-
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Yeah, so we'll run this one like an interview. I'll interview you
Sure.
about the
hmm
whole event. And yeah, I'm excited to hear about it because gentle viewer or listener, I haven't actually heard much about this. I was checking in with Scott over the weekend to see how he was doing game per game, but this is my first time actually getting a rundown.
This is a true
Uh,
debrief. This
This
is
is a
us doing it
true
live.
live debrief. So, Scott, you ran Leagues of Votan.
My Leagues of Votan list.
Yep.
I
Take me through the
ran
list.
I ran 2 hecatons
Hmm.
with the SP conversion beamers.
Okay.
I ran 2 Einherjar champions, one with Wayfarer's Grace, and because I was so lucky to have the points update come out just before the competition, I actually had to drop an enhancement in order to make my list work.
Okay.
It was that, or so I dropped Appraising Glare, which I
Hmm.
really missed and probably should not have done, because that is such a key enhancement. It really was missed in a lot of the games. We'll get into that.
Okay.
But what they did with the points change was Jaegers went up by 10 points.
Hmm.
Fine. I had, I think, a 10-point
You had
buffer in my
space. Yep.
list, so that would have been fine. But then my 10-man brick of Hearthguard, which is the Votan Terminators,
Right.
running their Vulcanite disintegrators and obviously their grenades. So you
Hmm.
get D6 per guy. So that's D6 10
Yep. Yeah, it's
right? And then
a
I've
lot of
got, and then it's
confetti.
three shots per Hearthguard with their Volkite, so that's 30 shots going in there. I ran them with a call, which gave them lethal hits.
Nice.
So volume, volume, volume is really
Right.
what that one does, and they can pick things up. And they're pretty punchy. They've basically got power fists, strength 9, -2, 2 damage apiece on a brick of 10 of them.
Yep.
They can lay down a hurt on some stuff. So I didn't want to split them up. The points
Hmm.
change had done a 10-point drop on the 5-man brick, but had
Hmm.
left the 10-man at 320.
Okay.
So that's actually what pushed me over my 2K limit by 10 points. And I
Hmm.
really wanted to hold on to that brick. So I decided to remove Appraising Glare. Big mistake. Big, big,
Hmm.
big mistake. I probably could have just done with the 5-man and done something with them, just run them together, close
Okay.
together, but they would have lost some lethal hits. And they would have lost some stuff on strats. So I'm still torn on it, but I feel like I missed Appraising Glare too much. I probably should have done something
Okay.
different. I should have
But
played something different in
so
my list.
what's Wayfarer's Grace?
So Wayfarer's Grace is the one that gives on a 2-up, the model can stand back up with full wounds outside engagement range.
Okay. And
I,
then what does Appraising Glare do?
Appraising Glare is the enhancement that lets you choose an objective marker that your opponent currently controls, and everything
Hmm.
on it gets an additional judgment token. So if they have no judgment tokens, they get one. If they have one, it automatically bumps them to two. Judgment tokens increase your hitting and your wound roll by one.
Right. Yeah,
So one for
one for the
wound.
hit and then one for the wound. Gotcha.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then what's the points difference between Wayfarers and Appraising?
It
Are they the
was
same points?
20 and 25. So 24 appraising, 25 for, I believe it was 25 for Wayfarers. I probably should have swapped Wayfarers out for
Yeah,
appraising,
immediately my immediate thought right there is like, oh yeah, I would have done the extra judgment token one over
but
this
the
because I would like stand back up like, well,
yeah, the
okay.
idea for the stand back up one was I could leave him in reserve, throw him in a back line, let him do a locus in a deployment zone, let him do engage on all fronts, let him do behind enemy lines, let him do
Right.
containment. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff he could do. And then if he
Hmm.
gets hit the first time, he's got 5 wounds, he's got a 4-up invuln, he's got
Okay.
those kind of things where I'm like, okay, he can still be an action monkey and he can do it
Hmm.
for a little bit longer. was the idea.
Hmm.
It worked out a couple times. He stood back up and he did a couple things, but ultimately appraising glare would have been the better choice.
Okay.
So
So
that
what else
was
was on the list?
so then I had 3 units of three Pioneers, which are the bikes,
Yep.
Scouts 12-inch
Awesome.
movements,
Hmm.
three Sagittars, again, Scout 12-inch movement. And then I had a 10 man of Warriors that I could split. Um,
Hmm.
five to stay on the home, make it sticky, and then could move out to do some screening and back in my deployment zone.
Hmm.
And then another five that I can get out and do action monkey stuff that had a beamer. And only because I had them modeled this way, I don't have them with the high las cannons and that kind of stuff. I have to get those parts and kind of, you know, finagle getting those back on because they're
Right.
better weapons. But I had a Magna Rail and a beamer on those guys. The idea would be that they could do a little bit of punchiness and hopefully do some shooting while they're out
Yeah.
doing some
Yeah, it
actions.
doesn't cost you anything to
No.
outfit them in 10th, so
And then I
yeah.
had two 5 man bricks of Berserks, which
Okay.
previously haven't done much for me.
Hmm.
They were great.
Okay.
I really enjoyed those units. I definitely downplayed them too much. They're back up in my books for sure.
Okay. And so this was the Toronto Fall Open. This was October 19th and 20th,
Yep.
downtown Toronto, 2024.
Yep.
Day one, early start, right?
Day one kicked off, was supposed to kick off around 8 o'clock in the morning, I think was
Hmm.
game one. 8:30 type of thing. So I had to be
Okay.
down there early. Um, first game was into a wonderful guy named Diogo
Hmm.
running Tau Retaliation Cadre.
Okay.
So, as our listeners know, I am not a fan of the Tau Retaliation Cadre. I haven't figured them out. They are definitely a small bane
Hmm.
for me. And he was running it with Farsight. Um, I can't remember the other character's name, and he had at least two hammerheads with the big rail guns on them.
Right.
So I played a fairly cagey deployment where he couldn't see me right away, and I hung in there. Um,
What was the mission? And what was the
uh,
secondary and stuff
just
for that one?
let me pull that one up while I keep talking.
Yeah, sure.
Um, it was an interesting game because um, I was trying my best to stay away from the hammerheads because I knew a one shot could just take out my hecatons.
Okay.
That it was going to be no big deal for them to kind of take care of the hecaton. So I did my deployment to kind of keep things away.
Hmm.
Um, just pulling up the player pack. So round one was sweeping engagement, swift
Hmm.
actions, and terraform.
Okay.
So ha tried to get out with some Jaegers to block some stuff, try and start some terraform. The challenge is they've got to survive long enough to get through
Hmm.
to perform. Uh,
Who
but
went first?
I believe he went first.
Okay. And so did you do that thing again where you put the Jaegers out in a line?
No, I
Okay, good.
actually I actually learned a lesson and only in one of the games did I deploy them kind of out, and that's because they were scouting. They could do like I could get them out there, and there wasn't much danger of them getting shot off the board right away. There
Okay.
was some movement that I could do. Um, but by and large, what I was trying to do was keep as much alive as I could. I
Hmm.
didn't want to necessarily be shot at right away in turn one. I
Hmm.
didn't want to necessarily get out and do a lot of shooting in turn one
Okay.
unless there was like real opportunity to do that. So
Okay.
I tried to play it KG, tried to play it
This is in the
conservative
first game.
in the first game. Tried to play
Okay.
it KG, tried to play it conservative. Because they're such a shooty army, I was like, okay, I don't want to give them a lot to shoot at.
Okay.
So did my best to kind of decide where on the board I was willing to go and where I didn't want to go. Um, kind of that whole idea of I don't just because I could try and hold three objectives doesn't, or the three no man's land objectives doesn't mean I should.
Hmm.
Tried to really kind of castle up into just smaller quarters of the board. That was kind of my overall strategy the entire tournament what is the kind of triangle of success or box of success that I'm going to
Sure.
look for depending on the deployment map. Um, Tried that as best I could. Deep striking, long range shooting. Eventually, you have to move out and you have to start
Hmm.
scoring, trying to get some objectives and scoring secondaries and stuff. So, um, Diogo is a really great player, really experienced player, and I think was just baiting me into a few different moves here and there, and was just able to kind of take care of me without much of an issue.
Hmm.
To be honest, it's a matchup that, as you know, I struggle with to begin with.
Right.
Um, but I did my best to kind of stay in there, and this was my best scoring game of the entire tournament. So overall,
Okay.
he scored 100.
Hmm.
I scored 61.
Okay.
So I did better than I was kind of expecting, given who I was going up against and the army I was going up against.
Did
Um,
you played tactical the whole tournament?
I played tactical the entire tournament.
Okay.
Yeah,
And how
I don't think fixed will work so well with
and
us.
how did you manage with getting secondaries and stuff like that?
Secondaries wasn't, there was one game in particular that
No, no, just
secondaries,
let's do one
but
game at a time. Yeah.
this game I didn't do too bad with secondaries. It was the primaries and doing terraform that I just wasn't able to get those in. I wasn't able to get a terraform going early enough to just keep scoring the points through the rest of the game.
Yeah, because that's like 2 points,
Yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
just
Something
two
like that.
points that just kind of carries if you can do it at
Just
least once.
ticks away.
Um,
Yeah.
and and I believe it's still an action. So your guys get out, they have to perform the action in order to do it.
Hmm.
Um, so it removes some of their shooting. Against the Tau, I really felt I had to do some shooting, and getting out and onto objectives was a bit of a challenge. I would get out onto them for a turn, but then he would be able to kind of deep strike in and move in, and all
Right.
the guiding and shooting kind of took care of some stuff. Again, the Hearthguard pop in and nearly wipe out a unit with some of their shooting, and then can move in for some attacking, and really help. He had taken my home objective at one point. I managed to get it back.
Hmm.
Um, and then it was just keeping some movement around, but I was just outplayed.
Right.
He was just a far better player than I was. So, um,
Any unit of the game for that one? MVPs in the first round?
no, no.
No, no.
Well, the Hearthguard I think were really good.
Hmm.
Um, I've been happy with them the entire tournament. But the game one, I went into it feeling happy, and I left the
Hmm.
game feeling happy. I was
Good.
like, you know what? I did my best. I was
Hmm.
outplayed.
Good
Um,
score.
and that's it. I did, a respectable score on this one.
Hmm.
And I was quite content with that. So I was like, that's fine. This is a good way to start the tournament for me.
Okay, so round one, Tau.
Round
You're
one,
going into
Tau.
round two. Who did you hit up round two?
I hit up Chase, the previous winner from Critical Hits last
Yes,
tournament with his
of
Chaos Demons.
GTA 40K fame. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I
Another
played
really good
him round
player.
one. Very good player. Very
Yeah.
nice guy. Very fun to play against.
Yep. Had great words to say about you. He was like,
Oh,
"Hey,
that's good.
you're Paul's brother." And I was like, "Yes, I was." He's like,
Yeah.
"Is he here?" I was like, "No, he's not. He couldn't make it down this time." Um, so he was like, "Do you know about my list?" And I was like, "I heard about it. I heard
Yeah.
about it."
He didn't catch our episode debriefing it, but
But so he walked
um
me through kind of the mechanics of it, his fixed
yeah,
secondaries and everything like that. I think he had something different in this list than he had with you. He actually had a
go on.
knight.
Yeah, he did have a night last time. I forgot to
Okay.
mention it. No, the night the night was there too. How could I forget that? You know how I forgot about the night? Because Illuminor Xeris charged him in that last game and kept him at bay in combat for like th 2.5 rounds. He was like my
Okay.
MVP of that match.
That's
Just tied
awesome.
up a night all by himself. Um, but
Uh,
yeah, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, he had a
yeah, he
big
had a
big
knight. He had a
night. Yeah.
beast of Nurgle.
Yeah.
He had a the Piper demon and
Hmm.
one other one that he had just swapped into his list that he wasn't 100% on whether he wanted to keep them in the list or not.
Okay.
Um, Mostly because so anyway, getting into it, that round was, and I'll look it up. Round two was a search and destroy deployment.
Okay.
So in our table quarters type of thing.
Yep.
Prepared positions.
What's that
Uh,
one?
that is your battle line can go to ground or heroically intervene for 0 CP.
Oh, that's cool. Yep.
And then burden of trust. Um, so
Is
this
that the
is
one where the one objective ends up becoming more valuable?
no,
What's that one?
that's that's the next round.
Okay.
I can't remember its name. This is the one where you can control an objective for 4, but then it's your can say a unit's guarding it, and then you
Oh,
get 2 points
right.
for it. So
Right.
you can get 6 points per everything that you're kind of doing on
Yep.
that.
So who
Um,
went first? I like to know who went first because I think it's often a discussion in other podcasts and stuff I've read online where like people say in Prime Nexus going second is advantageous. So I'm just curious about it as you
I
go through your
think I
games.
went first this time.
Okay.
Um, I'm having a hard time remembering the order of who went where,
Sure.
except for the last game, because to be fair, Saturday I was exhausted.
Yeah,
It
you would
was
be.
four
Yeah.
games into it.
Yeah.
It was 4 games on day one, 2 games on day two.
Hmm.
Um, I'm impressed that I remember as much as I actually do
Well,
right
I'm
now.
sure talking about it jogs your memory, but
But yeah, this one I deployed a little bit more into the center because I knew he didn't have as much shooting that he could do outside of his knight.
and
Um,
those soul grinders. Didn't he have the
this
three soul
he
grinders?
had the
Because they've
soul
got some good
grinders. They
shooting.
had some good shooting. I threw some judgment tokens on them.
Hmm.
But again, it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I'm going to have my home. I'm going to
Hmm.
try and get the objective across from me, and then we're going to try and fight it out for the middle.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I deployed. I moved things up so that I could move up to the center, but then
Hmm.
had a whole bunch of stuff on my flank that I moved over to that other objective.
Okay.
Just so happens that he decided to play fun with his knight and let it do some stuff. So
Hmm.
its movement, it got moved right over onto that other objective in no man's land
Mm.
and was ready to do some damage on some things. So I think it did some shooting, it did some melee into, I believe it wiped out a Sagittar right away.
Yep.
Um, so I got my berserks out and stuff like that. I ended up getting to shoot into it with my Hecaton,
Hmm.
with another Sagittar, one or two other Sagittars, and then threw my berserks at it. And I believe I popped off Warrior's Pride, a
Hmm.
stratagem that they've got, where if something has some judgment tokens on it, you
Hmm.
increase the AP of their damage. So
Okay.
they're strength 9, -2, 3 damage apiece. If something's got 2 judgment tokens, I can take it up to -4 AP, 3 damage apiece.
Right.
Makes it a little bit more spicy.
Yep. Pushes it onto
Um,
its end bones.
so managed to actually take out the knight,
Okay.
and get rid of that one big threat.
Yeah.
Um, did my best to do some screening, but still had to keep guys out far enough that they could take care of soul grinders.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to think. He had the kind of bloat drone-ish things that the Age of
Yep.
Sigmar ones that
Yep.
can come into 40K. He had some of those that I eventually had to deal with, by bringing in a warrior or a champion, but dropping in both champions, and they were able to kind of come in and take care of those. Try and take care of a soul grinder. His soul grinders were uppy downy type of stuff. He was able
Hmm.
to do some of that.
Yeah, I think it's a strat. Like he pays a CP and he
He
can
does. Yeah,
pick
he's
guys
always
up.
got like he always had no CP because that's what he was always using it
Yep.
on. The downside is he dropped in a Rodigus
Yep.
and a Great Unclean One into
Yep.
my home, and
Yep.
I just and Rodigus had, I think it was a 6 inch bubble around him that reduces movement by half or by a couple. Yeah, it was by half.
Right.
So instantly, like my guys only move 5 to start.
Yeah, so
Um,
immobilize the little five
my
guys
I
right
had some
away.
Sagittars over by him. Their 12
Mm,
inch movement is now 6 inches. So I eventually anything that was close to him was getting denied from being able to do some secondaries of moving over to him because he was often objective, but I didn't have, even with advanced roles, I couldn't get people over to where they needed to be just based on some movement stuff.
Right.
Um, so again, really great guy, really, really good player,
Hmm.
a fantastic demons player, really knows how to get it in and how to do stuff. And even though I knew kind of the mechanics of his list, I didn't have the skill to kind of shut down his being able to come in and
Yeah.
still take care of some of the soul grinders because I found his list was really powerful in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's got like six monstrous units, right? Like
Yeah.
the knight, the two greater unclean ones, the named one Rodigus, and then the other one, and then the three soul grinders. So he's got like huge. It's like those are, big tanky. Because I think
hmm
soul grinders are like, I don't know, 14 wounds, something like
Something like
that.
that.
Maybe
They were
12 to 14 wounds. So it's a bit hard to pop one.
there. I was
Everything has like a 5 up invuln, I think,
yeah, and
just
then
about. Sometimes a
if
4
you're
up.
in the shadow of chaos or whatever it's called, and if it can force you to take battle
Battle
shock tests,
shock.
and then if you fail the battle shock, you're taking mortals.
Right.
My list doesn't have any feel no pains in them really
Hmm.
on the stuff that I need
Yeah.
um to take care of take care of those
Now
mortal
he
wounds.
played fixed, right?
He played fixed, so I did
Yeah.
manage on at least one turn to shut down any scoring that he could get whatsoever
Okay.
from his secondaries. Because he tried to drop in a Beast of Nurgle. He dropped it into my deployment zone, had it do locus, and then it was behind enemy lines.
Hmm.
And I had a hecaton that just
Poured
obliterated
everything
it,
into it. Yeah.
poured everything in, managed to take care of it in the one round, and he was like, "Oh, I don't get any points this one." So that was one moment
Oh,
where I was like, "I am proud of myself for shutting that down." Your secondaries were completely shut off there.
oh, did you overwatch it?
Yeah,
Oh, you overwatched it and got rid of it.
overwatched and got
Oh,
rid of it.
okay. I was didn't follow you there because I was like, he would
Sorry,
score
yeah,
it in his movement phase. So
yeah, no,
basically at the end of his own turn.
I overwatched and took care of it with all the shooting from the
Ah, and then you paid the price. What was the ultimate score for that one?
The ultimate score in that one was the one round that I shut out his 8 points. He got 91 to 42.
Yeah, God damn it.
So, but
Um,
again, I went up against a really strong, really impressive
really good
player
player. Yeah, great
and
player.
did my best and managed to
Yep.
do something to impede them. And I was like, okay, again, I'm kind of happy with this. And that's kind of the trend for the entire um
Right.
tournament
Tournament.
was I went up against some really good players, a lot of experienced players.
Mm,
Um People that have been playing it for years and years and
sure.
years, and this is not their first rodeo. Like they've been to the Fall Open before, they've been to these kind of things.
They've done GTs before. They've
They've done
done grand
GTs before.
tournaments. Yeah. Did you and Chase debrief the game at all? Did you have any time to do that?
Yeah, I debriefed with everybody that I played, well, almost everybody that I played with.
Okay. Do you remember any
And
pointers he had for you, anything he'd
his
recommend?
there was one thing where he was like, I should have come in sooner,
Hmm.
further down to take care of the bloat drones, and that
Hmm.
would have forced him to come back down the board. Instead of
Mm,
trying to defend and take things out as they were, I should have
mm.
adjusted my plan and been like, okay, totally give up on that section, move
Yeah,
back over here, and it
as
would have forced things backwards.
as you describe that match, I'm like, it's so much work to deny him secondaries. It would almost been better to like just forget about home and push forward and think about taking his, because is in his home, didn't he just leave like Nurglings and
He
some
had
plague
some,
bears or something like
yeah,
that?
he had plague bearers
Yeah,
and nurglings and that kind of thing, but it was one
squishy
of those.
stuff.
The other thing was like he also kind of move blocked me with my hecatons and stuff because he had
Right.
the
He
soul
had big
grinders
things.
in kind of the two lanes that I could actually move things. So the
Right.
best things I could do was rapid ingress or just wait for my reinforcement stage to bring in from reserves to bring some stuff in. And that was ultimately the play that I had to do to try
Mm,
and remove at least one objective from him, secure another one for me, and take care of some units.
okay. So your
But I
two
didn't do it
games,
soon enough and that kind of thing.
right? So you're two games in at this point. Where
Hmm.
did you feel like you're remembering your rules and remembering to like take advantage of like strat reserves,
I was
your bikes, like picking them up?
Yes, I did feel like I was remembering that kind of stuff and trying to plan out what my next move would be, trying
Hmm.
to not be uber reactive, trying to have
Yep,
an action plan,
sure.
trying to put it in motion. Um, but yeah, I think I've still got a long ways to go before I'm really going to be
Well,
able to execute on that if
I
super effectively.
I think with enough practice, a lot of this stuff will become intuitive. But
Hmm.
game three.
Game three, the only other Votan player at the goddamn tournament. And it's a mirror match to the
It's
point where one of the judges walks by and then does a double take and walks backwards and goes, "Is this a mirror match?" And we're like,
like
"Yeah."
exact same list.
Not quite the exact same. So in his list, he had two hackathons. I think he had two Sagittars. He had two 10-man bricks of Berserks,
Okay.
which thought was an interesting choice.
Mm,
It's a very interesting choice to go with. They're very effective in a 10-man brick. They still can die relatively easily, like
hmm.
um, some shooting goes into them. So this game was so this was around almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon by this point. That's what we're into with game three.
Right.
This was a hammer and anvil deployment.
Hmm.
Smoke and mirrors, which just gives you another 500-ish points to throw into strategic reserve if you want to. And then supply drop. This is the alpha and omega objectives.
Yep. Yep. The one that goes away.
The one that
One
ends up
goes away, and then one ends up being 15 points
one
or
ends
something
up
like
being
that. Yep.
15, yeah. So this was an interesting list because it was one of those like, okay, I'm passing out my judgment tokens, and it's like, to your hackathons, you're doing it to mine, okay. And it
Hmm.
was like
Yep.
it was like one of those things where you're just kind of trading things back and forth almost the entire game. Um, I'm able to do some secondaries and other ones I'm not. He's able to do some secondaries and other ones he's not.
Gotcha.
Um, and we're going back and forth and scoring that way. He was unfortunate enough not to have his army fully painted,
Hmm.
so he didn't get the 10 points for battle ready.
So he's rolling into the start of this game at
He's
-10.
with
He's
-10.
Yeah, he's basically in the hole to start
He's in
off with.
he's in the hole. And then we played it out, and it was one of those ones where I was kind of happy. I was okay with him taking an objective that
Hmm.
wasn't going to be worth anything later on in the game.
Hmm.
We would fight over it, and I would try and take care of models that were on it so that he couldn't necessarily score just with some shooting, but I
Hmm.
wasn't putting any active energy into getting onto it to steal it from him. I was
Right.
focusing more on my home objective, the middle objective, which was going to be sticking
And
around, and the
and the
other one that,
Omega. Or,
yeah, the alphas and the omegas type of thing.
hmm.
Um, and so those were the areas that we were focused in and shooting out and just battling over for the entire game. This was the one where I ended up winning the game, uh,
Okay. Nice.
51 to 47. So
Super
really close,
close.
really, really close game. Had he had his 10 points, he actually would have won by
He
the
would have
six
won.
points.
Now
But
this one we texted a little bit, because this one was going a little bit slower.
this one was going slower, and I feel for my opponents because the amount of shooting that Votan can do can just be
Yeah.
like, oh my God, could it just be over with by now?
Yeah.
It can get quite annoying. Um, but he didn't have the 10-man brick of Hearthguard where it's like
Hmm.
30 shots and then
Right.
it's 10d6 to figure out how many more shooting
Right.
units or shots you're going to have. So, like when it was my turn, it took a long while. So, on round five, we didn't actually end up finishing the full game. On round
Mm.
five, we had to kind of talk it out, and that's where it was like, well, my units that are still around, I still have a Hecaton, I still have some bikes, I still have a Sagittar, I still have, my 10-man brick. They would shoot whatever one unit you've got off of that one, and they would all move up and kind of pile in onto the main objective, scoring me my 15, getting me my
Mm.
remaining secondaries and that kind of thing, and just shutting him down that way. Um, and that's kind of how we talked it out. It was like, okay, this one would trade off that one would trade off this one. These guys would
Right.
like do their shooting, charge in, wipe out that unit, and then just castle up and hold on to that objective.
Right.
Because I'd taken out his hecatons. I was finishing up taking out his berserks. So he was kind of running low on some units to be able
Hmm.
to kind of be able to shift me at the very end.
Right.
But he had scored a secondary earlier in the game that I wasn't able to make up for in some of my card draws. So that's what
Hmm.
ultimately would have given him the 6 point lead. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, the battle ready point. So I got lucky, but I
You
got
got
the win.
lucky. You
I
got the
got
win.
I got the win at a GT, so I can't be too upset about that.
Nope. And did you guys debrief at all?
We didn't really debrief after that one because we had been running, we would run over a little bit by the time we had
Uh,
submitted our scores.
Makes sense.
Next pairings had come up. So we kind of just said this is kind of how it goes with a mirror match. It's always going to be fairly close.
Yeah.
Wished him best luck in rest of the day for him and that kind of thing. And we were like
And
really
away you went.
gracious with each other and everything like that. Um, a slight tangent. I ended up talking to one of his friends in day two.
Hmm.
He was a guy that actually plays at the Battle Ready games up in Markham,
Okay.
who were, I think, an unofficial slash official sponsor of the actual tournament as
Oh,
well.
cool.
So every table had Brian X's cards on them
Hmm.
that they had made. I don't know if they're official, if this would technically
Yeah.
be allowed, but
Worry about it.
they were really cool. So everybody got a copy. So you didn't have to have the official cards with you. They had them
Nice.
kind of packaged up for everybody, which I thought
That's
was
ju- it's just
amazing.
handy. It's one of those small things that's like,
Huge quality of life thing where you're just like, you know
yeah,
what?
I don't have to get my deck out and
Boom.
put them in and then
Had had the secret
remember to collect
missions and
them.
it had those and it had
Perfect.
all of your
You just had to
secondaries.
bring, oh, all your secondaries. You didn't even
It
have to
was
bring your secondaries. The
no, it
whole,
was the secondaries were
awesome.
there and the secret missions were there. That's all you
Awesome.
needed.
Great.
So that was a really cool kind of quality of life type of thing that I thought I'd give a shout out to. So
Okay. Uh, all right. Game four. This is
game
like 5:30 at
game
night.
four,
Evening.
5:30 at night.
Dinner time. I'd be starving.
I wasn't at this point, I wasn't even hungry. I was just ready to go to bed. I was so tired.
I was like, you're pumped. You're
My
already ready
my
for blood.
legs are hurting. I'm still actively engaged, but it's like, you know what? My legs are hurting. My back's starting to hurt. It is
Yeah.
hot in here. Because something I didn't mention at the beginning, there were 60 of us playing the 40K tournament,
Yep.
and there was roughly 50 other people playing an old world tournament.
Amazing. I didn't know
Um,
there was that many old world players,
Neither did I, but there was
but
enough
that's
for
great.
50 of them to be playing at that. So there you go. You have 110 people in here, all
Hmm.
rolling dice.
Yeah.
Really high ceilings. I don't know that the windows opened. The place got hot. The
The
place got
place got hot.
sweaty.
Got
Um,
sweaty.
so
Okay.
at that point, you're just like, I'm hot. I'm uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Let's see what this game brings. Went into this one was a crucible of battle. So again, diagonal deployments, rapid escalation. So again, this is another one of these strategic reserve type of things. And then purge the foe.
Oh yeah, okay. Hold objectives, score points, kill at units, score points.
Yeah, hold
Kill more,
more,
score
kill
more.
more,
Yeah.
score more points type of
Okay.
idea.
Yeah, I like this one. You and I played this one.
Yeah, I normally like this one. It's a fun one to go into.
Hmm.
Um, I ended up playing a guy by the name of Nick.
Hmm.
Jordan, who was just on our podcast the other day, was talking about him as one of the guys up in Petawawa who runs
Oh,
the
right, of
tournaments.
course. Yes.
So, really great guy, really
Hmm.
nice guy, has been playing for a very long time. Turns out he let me know kind of at the start of the game and then reminded me by the end of the game
Right.
that he is going to be playing in the Worlds and is taking Votan as his army to
As his
Worlds.
army. So he
So
knew everything about your
he
army
knew everything about my army.
and
Um,
And
And
he's going to
he,
be rolling down there with the space dwarves
yes,
in
and he's
Atlanta.
rolling down there with space dwarves. And he was actually playing. This was a really cool thing that they had done up in his area where he had run a charity food drive type of thing where people donated money or
Very
something like
cool.
that. They could pick his list to bring to the Fall Open, or at least his
Oh,
army
wow.
faction.
So who was
Um,
he playing?
so I just want to give him a quick shout out. He
Yep.
ended up collecting, I think it was about 2,700 bucks for the local food
Awesome.
bank. So everyone in his area decided that he would be playing demons.
Okay.
So second time playing demons at the tournament into
Hmm.
a another fantastic player.
Yeah.
And having only played demons really one other time before,
Yeah.
this is a very different list, was tactical, didn't play fixed, still had the uppy downies,
Hmm.
had a star brand, um, Bellacore,
Hmm. Love
um,
Bellacore.
he had the big fat guy, the great unclean one. He had, I think he kept calling him during the game Fatty. He was like,
Yeah.
Fatty will stay here and do this.
Yeah.
Fatty will do
Yeah.
that. He had a Lord of Change, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And there was one other demon with wings. Um, was it a
Like a Star
Bloodthirster?
Brand or a
It
Blood
looked like a
Star
Star Brand, but
Brand?
I think it was a Bloodthirster because
Bloodthirster. Yep.
yeah. And then he had some of the demonettes.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to think of what else he had on his tray. Um, yeah, I don't recall what the other ones were. So
Okay.
this is one of those games where I I kind of didn't know how to really tackle his list because he still had the uppy downy kind of rule. So I
Hmm.
was still trying to. This was one of those ones with the diagonal deployment. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to hold home. I'm going to
Hmm.
try and get out into the middles and hold some of the like middle one over here and maybe the one over this way.
Hmm.
Um, to try and take some stuff. Screwed up my deployment right away. I put a Sagittar over on a side that I shouldn't have with some Berserks. He had some Nurglings up on a spot, and I was like, you know what? Uh, for some reason, he and I debriefed this afterwards. I was like, I don't know what I was thinking when I did this. And it
Right.
was as soon as I deployed them and kind of as I deployed, I was like, okay, I'm deploying on the line. I've got some guys where they are. The Sagittar can see into the middle should anything come up. This shouldn't be a big problem. I don't
Hmm.
mind the placement there. And then he put some Nurglings down. And then for some reason in my head, I was like, ooh, I'm going to kill Nurglings. And it was like, why would I do that?
Why?
Because
Who
they have no
cares?
OC. There's
Yeah.
nothing they can
They,
do. They can maybe move block me, but they're nothing.
yeah.
And so I deployed. I got some Zerks out, went in and attacked them and kind of killed them off. And then a great unclean one came in and wiped out my berserks. And I was like, okay, yeah, that I don't know why I did that.
Right.
And then so there I've just like lost a unit and I'm kind of backing up with the rest of them.
And the
And
Sagittar they came in on, right?
and yeah, I think the Sagittar ended up getting taken out. Oh no,
Hmm.
I moved the Sagittar up because he moved I'm trying to think what the demon's name was. It's one of the lady demons. He brought it
Okay.
in and put it on the center objective, and I moved
Hmm.
my Sagittar up and wiped her out.
Right.
Um, and then kept my Sagittar there for as long as I could. Um,
Okay.
so it actually lasted for a little while in kind of the center because we ended up kind of duking things out on the far left and into my deployment zone because surprise, surprise, like Bellacore was able to come in on a 6-inch deep strike, not a nine
Hmm.
inch, and
Hmm.
things like that. Um, so they came in. My rolling was garbage by this time. I wasn't getting overwatches. Even when I was attempting an overwatch with judgment tokens on things, things weren't helping. Things just were not working. I wasn't able to get a lot of secondaries on this one.
Oh, so do you get to when you Overwatch with the judgment tokens?
It helps on the wounds. It doesn't help on the
Oh,
hits.
okay. Okay, go on.
Um, but
Read my
yeah,
mind.
like it wasn't. It just even on my round of shooting, like
Hmm.
to say that I had casino cannons, which is what they always call the Votan's cannons.
Hmm.
You got like two shots, it's going to be a hit or a miss, and sure as shit, each one of them would
Missed every
fail.
time. Yeah.
Or if they did hit, it was right into his invuln, and it's like a 4-up, 5-up invuln, and it was like
Yeah.
okay. So my shooting just ended up being kind of
You needed
a
him to
non-story.
fail some saves, and you
Yeah,
needed to hit.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he ended up taking that game 96 to 37.
Jesus.
Yeah, so I got my ass handed to me on that one.
You got spanked in front
Yeah,
of everybody.
yeah. But it was funny because a few of the friends that we have from like mid-table terrace and that kind of walked
Sure.
around, they would see it and they just looked and they're like, "Oh my God, you're playing up against that person now?"
Yeah.
They're like, "You're not getting any breaks today."
Yeah, so because you played the first guy,
The first guy, he's been considered for Team Canada.
he's because was it Jordan that mentioned him on the podcast, or
Yeah,
I
I
feel
think
like
he
someone's
mentioned him
name dropped
after.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe it was after when we were shooting the breeze after the recording, but I was when you told me the name, I remembered. I'm like, I've heard that guy's name before. And then
yeah.
Chase, of course, it was I
Chase is
played
a
him
really,
myself.
really strong player.
He's a great player. And then what was the third opponent's name?
His name was Junda.
Junda.
Um,
Um,
I don't know
yeah,
if what his experience is, but he was a
you're
good
cl
player.
you're close enough to Markham that that's an easy drive actually
Yep.
for you. It wouldn't be a bad idea to go
Yeah.
out to that Battle Ready Games and check
Yeah.
out
One of
that scene.
the store manager was walking around and he gave me some wound markers because I ended up
Awesome.
playing two of his kind of buddies. So I got
That's great.
some cool wound markers for him. And then
Listener, check
yeah.
out Battle Ready Games in Markham, Ontario.
And then yeah, Nick, Demons player, obviously really good going to
Yeah,
Worlds.
Nick the Man, Petawawa's very own.
Yep.
Uh,
Definitely
apparently,
runs
host
great
one
tournaments.
apparently
So
runs a fantastic tournament. I am gonna keep my eye out for his next event because it's been so highly recommended. And not
yep.
only, the other guys 40K podcast who, I respect their opinions and
hmm
love that show, and I've listened to their pod about that tournament itself, and it sounded like a fucking great time,
Yeah.
like absolutely brilliant. So I can't wait to try that out. So end of the Saturday,
End of the
you're
Saturday,
one and four.
exhausted.
You've won one and you've lost three,
1-1, lost three, walking away with
firmly in the consolation league.
firmly planted there
Yeah,
with I'm walking out with a big shit-eating grin on my face, just
yeah,
having my ass handed to me all day. And
yeah.
I'm like, this has been so much fun. I'm like, I was the happiest idiot coming
Oh,
home.
good. That's great.
I was so, so pleased. There
Awesome.
was nothing to feel bad about. I was
Hmm.
like, you know what? I went into top level players. I
Yeah,
got to meet some really cool people,
yeah.
got some great advice on things, um, things to remember about playing, things to remember about deployment, things to remember about units, things to
Okay.
remember. Like one of the things Nick was telling me was like, just because a unit can scout or
Hmm.
can do this, can infiltrate into all these areas, doesn't mean they have to.
Right, of course.
Kind of things. And it's like it's one of those kind of no-brainer moments where like, yeah, why do I do that? Why
Right.
do I push things out when I don't need to? Why am I opening myself up when I don't need
Hmm.
to? So I was taking a lot of learnings, a lot of things, applying some back ointment when I get home because my old man body was tired.
Need
And
to get back to the gym.
yeah, exactly. You'd think you would be used to carrying some weight around, but apparently not. It got too
Apparently not.
strained. Um, but
So
yeah,
get home, get a sleep,
get a
back
sleep.
in Sunday
Debrief with the
morning,
family, kind
debrief
of
with the family.
see how they're doing, everything like that. And
Yeah.
then yeah, round five, get back in for first game is for I think it was 9 o'clock this time.
Okay.
So a slightly later start.
Hmm.
Um, and this was where things um, were a little bit more discouraging for me because the way that
Hmm.
the tournament works is you're kind of path to victory type of idea. It's you're
Okay.
getting evenly matched with people, and then it's a randomization. It's like people that have lost as many as you, and then or won as many as you, and you're kind of getting matched up that way.
Right.
From what I could tell, a lot of the people that didn't do as well, i.e., people like me,
Hmm.
um, dropped on day two and didn't decide to come back. Or there was a good
Oh,
amount of people that I guess didn't have battle ready points, so would drop out on day two because they didn't want to start with their 10 point deduction or didn't win as many and dropped out and that kind of thing. So I had looked
really?
at my ranking or my pairing the night before, and this is
Hmm.
just me assuming things. I could be wildly wrong about this. Uh,
Okay, so there was. there wasn't an announcement or anything
There
about
wasn't any
drops.
announcement. It
Okay.
was just I looked at my pairings the night before and I was like, "Oh, I'm going into the Battle Sisters. This will be
Oh
an
yeah,
interesting
you texted me that, and I was
competition."
like, cool. Yeah, you've played Sisters before. Yeah.
I've played them once before. I kind of
Hmm.
know they're fairly shooty. They've got the funny miracle
Yep.
or they've got their dice kind of situation that they can do that can be a real pain in the ass to deal with. This
Hmm.
will be an interesting battle. Get there, start looking for what table I'm at, doing some repairs. I had dropped a Pioneer on the floor and he'd popped off his base, so I made sure I had my
Oh,
crazy glue.
nice.
Quite a few people were dropping things, and
Yeah.
there was a lot of people on day two doing some quick repairs.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, looked up my table. All of a sudden, opponent isn't there. The opponent name is gone, and I'm just fighting nobody.
Right.
So I go to the tournament organizer, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm reorganizing all the drops and stuff." I get shifted over to another table.
Hmm.
I'm going into a Blood Angels player,
Hmm.
one of the Battle Ready player guys or friends of the Battle Ready games.
From Battle Ready Games of Markham.
Yep.
Know those
Um,
boys? Yep.
who had won two games yesterday, so he was
Hmm.
2-2. So that's what the
Ah,
judge had said to me. He was like, the downside is you're going against somebody who's kind of
done
done
better than
better than
you.
you
Yep.
with an army that's a little bit more in the meta right now,
Yep.
that kind of thing. I know it's early days. They had just gotten their new codex and stuff like that, but they are a bit of a beast. A lot of
Hmm.
jump packs, lots of movement, lots of stuff that they can do. So I was like, yeah, no worries. I'm just happy to be
Bring
playing the
it
game.
on.
Yeah, I'm thinking, you know what? I know my Votann can handle some Space Marines. We've got the stats
Yep.
that can handle them.
Yeah, the
Um,
shooting for
the
sure. I
shooting
would have
can
thought
can
for
take
shooting
care
for
of
sure.
stuff. I want to stay out of combat range. I want to do my
Yep.
best to stay out of combat. I want to just be handling things with shooting. Um,
And
the,
this Blood Angels list
it's
is
had
super agile because there's a ton of jump packs, right?
everything had a jump pack. He
Yeah.
had two Vindicators with Demolisher cannons. He had Lamarties. He had two five-man bricks of Sanguinary Guard. He
Hmm.
had uh, yeah, Lamarties, Dante, and a jump pack captain to go with some stuff. So instantly I'm like, okay, how am I going to handle this? I don't have precision to take care of the characters, which give a lot of the big buffs to the different groups. I'm just going to have to try and pile in some volume.
Hmm.
So I do my deployment. Our round one is like he's moved so that nothing can be seen. I've moved so nothing can be seen. We're not getting any shooting. We're trying to move up the board a little bit, but I know like what his thing is that he can come in fast because everything's got a 12-inch movement.
Hmm.
The jump pack intercessors can obviously deep strike. Uh,
And what mission is this? What's
this
the
is so it was the same table layout as the last game from the day before. So it was a map two, WTC Media map two. So that was nice. You didn't have to really set up a lot of the tables. They were pretty much set up from the night
right?
before. This was the Ritual,
Mm.
Swift Action, and Crucible of Battle.
The Ritual is one that I played and clearly didn't understand and need to play several times, I think,
I
to get a
th
hang of it. Because I think
Yeah.
there's a sweet science to it that I
Yeah, it's
don't
I was
know.
under the impression that you had to hold an objective before you could create another objective.
Yeah.
You just have to be within 12 inches of the
Hmm.
center objectives, or sorry, the no man's land objectives to create another one that is at least 6 inches away from a previous one.
Yeah.
So you have to be within 12 and then you can create one at 6.
Right.
Um, So I was a little sketchy on that rule. So I was kind of starting the game off on that one because I was like, I'm not as
Hmm.
comfortable with this one. Um, and then yeah, we just started playing. I think he had turn one. I think I had won the deployment roll off, but he got turn one. Um, so he had moved everything so I couldn't see them. So I really just kind of kept things. And this is one of those ones where I put my Jaegers up, but I put them behind a building so that I could at least, if I wanted to, if I had something that was like area denial or something like that, I could just put them in and move them up onto that center objective and get my area denial pretty quickly. But they were
Hmm.
behind, so nothing could see them, nothing could get shot. They were going
Hmm.
to stand in okay. I had my hecaton set up in a nice spot. I had everything was kind of set up nicely. Um, but then he's got a 12-inch movement
Hmm.
with a an advance and charge
Hmm.
rule that he can do. Everything gets a buff on advance and charge. Everything gets
Hmm.
lance on a charge with his strats and this kind of stuff. And it was just I
He's all,
had
all
I
over
had
you in a heartbeat.
he was all over me in a heartbeat. I had a hecaton up and I had done a big mistake where I hadn't left it at least an inch away from the wall.
Mm,
So because it was so close, he could charge into it right away.
right.
Little things like that where I was like,
Yeah.
oh God damn it. Like
The
intent
little
was to
trick.
be a little yeah, the
Yeah.
intent was to be behind the wall so you couldn't see it, you couldn't do anything to it. But clearly I didn't measure that 1 inch and
Hmm.
so he was able to take advantage of that. So he managed to actually tie up, wipe out the Jaegers that I had moved up and to score some points on the center objective. Um, or I had moved them up so that I could create. Again, not understanding the ritual well enough, I didn't
Yeah.
realize I didn't need to kind of move them. So anyway, moved them into a spot where he was able to get in with his sanguinary guard, and then he was able to wipe them out and then charge into my hecaton through the wall.
Yeah.
So then my
Yeah.
hecaton is tied up.
Mm.
Um, And then so I'm trying to kind of like move my other vehicles around so that I can see into them so I can start shooting with my vehicles because I still don't have anything that really responds to melee combat other than my berserks.
And because they move 12 inches, if you fall back, your the hecaton moves like 10, I'm
10
assuming.
inches, yeah.
So even if you fall back 10, they're just going to move all the way up to just outside of engagement
And then
range
charge me again
and no
and get
fail
all the
charge.
buffs and everything like that all over
Yeah.
again. So I had bikes on the side and I was picking them up and moving them around and
Mm.
trying to do shooting from different angles and stuff like that
Secondaries at the same time.
while still doing trying to do secondaries while still trying to staying out of line of sight of his vindicators with their demolisher cannons
Hmm.
um and things like that. I managed to pull in my 10-man brick, nearly wipe out an entire unit of sanguinary guard with or did wipe out a unit of sanguinary guard with the shooting. um had them behind some crates and stuff, but in order to do that, like fail a charge. So now they're stuck kind of behind some crates. So all his tank has to do is move over a little bit more.
Mm.
It was at some points it was just kind of the dice were betraying me, and it was like, okay, shooting, okay, nothing is going through. Charge it, nothing is charging through. And it's just at some point it's just like, oh, I'm losing this. Like I'm trying my best, but
Hmm.
I'm not getting the results that I'm looking for.
Were you spending your CP?
I was spending my CP. I was doing the sustained ones and twos. I was
Right.
doing
Your
I was
rerolls
doing
and
my void armor was something that I was constantly spending stuff on. I wasn't able to farm my CP because I wasn't once he tied up a couple things, I wasn't able to get some shooting into the units that I had put tokens on.
right.
So then I was just relying on getting the one or two. And this is where like appraising glare was just one of those things where I could have been like,
It would have edged it
God
up a bit
damn it,
for
it would
you.
have just been helping.
Yeah. Oh well, that's how you learn,
Learnings.
right?
It was all learnings.
By getting the practice in, getting the
Yeah.
games in. So I mean, when you at the end of the day, when you look at this tournament experience, it's 6 full games of Warhammer against complete strangers and
Total
armies
strangers,
and lists you've
totally
never
different
seen
armies.
before. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the end result for this one?
88 to 31.
88 to 31. Okay.
So not as big of a spanking, but still a good
It's
spanking.
still it's a good
Yeah. Yeah. Continue the trend. I mean, there's a reason I'm in the Constellation
Yeah.
League. This is why I'm one of the founders.
Yeah, this is why you're one of the founding members. Just a well
Chief,
spanked ass, just hanging out there,
yeah,
being like,
the
well,
chief
what do you
losing
expect?
officer.
Chief lo- CLO, Chief Losing Officer.
Uh,
Okay. And so
so
you're a bit bummed with this one because you're
I'm
like,
a
oh
little bit
shit, I
I
didn't
was like,
really.
yeah, my dice, I didn't get off the things I wanted to
Yeah,
get off. I was like, I don't feel like I set myself up poorly for this match. I
right.
feel like I just didn't do well in the match.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
I don't feel like I made the same mistakes as I had been making in day one. Like I
Yeah,
had done my
right.
deployment the way I wanted to.
Good.
I was trying to respond. I was trying to be proactive. I was trying to do some stuff,
Hmm.
like put plans in motion. And then it was like, okay, I'd be standing there and I'd be like, okay, he's going to do this. He's going to do that. He's going to do this. I'll be able to come in here with a unit on reserves. I'll be able to do
Hmm.
this and that. And then I would forget that, oh no, he's still got a unit in reserve. And then he
Right.
would bring them in and I'd be like, fuck, that closes me down in that area.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So it was just little things like that where it was like, okay, I think I've got an action plan. Oh no, that action plan is kind of going to fall apart. I brought
Right.
in my Hearthguard to do something. They did what they had to do, and then when I wanted them to charge into something, they failed to charge.
Right.
So while
Yeah.
they were in cover initially, that cover got blown once something was able to move.
Yeah. Yeah.
Little things like that.
Okay. So then we
Then we
take
go
our
in.
toys and we go into our last
The
match of the
last
tournament.
round, the very last round. This is an army I have never played into before. I've
So
played,
tell us about who's this guy? Who's this opponent?
his name is Mark.
Hmm.
Talked to him a little bit afterwards. He's another guy that's been playing Warhammer since about I think he said third. He was
Hmm.
playing it a little bit, got out of it, came back in like fifth and
Hmm.
seventh, and has been playing it since seventh edition type of thing.
Okay.
So lots of experience. Played at different tournaments, played Gene Steeler's army in a tournament not too long ago, and ended up coming 3-3.
Right.
So winning for his stuff. So I was like, oh, good, this will be a fun match.
Like I might go 3-3 at a tournament, never.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. A 3-3. Is that all you could do? So yeah,
yeah,
it was one of those kind of like, okay. Um, Went into it. Oh, World Eaters.
World Eaters. Yeah.
So
I've
I
never
I
played them.
I come off of a melee army to go
Mm.
into like the mother of all melee armies.
Yeah. Yeah.
I win the deployment roll. This was on the so this is a tipping point, so
Hmm.
the kind of Tetris pieces
Yep.
on the short ends of the board. Fog of War
Hmm.
and Linchpin. So
Yeah.
hold
Hold
your home,
yours and
hold the
hold
center
another for
one,
more.
and
Yep.
then you're getting up to I think it is like 8 points
Yes.
um
Something like
a
that.
turn, something like
Hmm.
that. Wouldn't know. What I win the deployment roll. So I line things up. I think I line them up pretty well. I do the thing where I'm like, okay, this is if I'm ever gonna have a time where I'm gonna line some guys up to move block, it's gonna
Yeah.
be now. This is the army I want to do it to.
Okay.
I line them up to move block.
Angron flies though.
Angron flies. Um, he deploys Angron on the corner of his 20 section
Yeah.
of the board.
Hmm.
So we get it all kind of lined up. He's like, "You ever played World Eaters before?" I said, "No, no. I know of them, but I've never
Hmm.
played into them." He's like, "Okay."
He's like,
Kind
I've
of,
just won this one.
yeah, explains kind of the mechanics of what they can do. He's got a guy that's got precision. He's got
Yep.
some exalted eight bound. He's got some eight bound. He's got some cultists, or some jackals. Sorry. Um, the berserks have this fun mechanic called blood
Hmm.
surge, where
Yep. You
if you
shoot
shoot
them and
into
they can
them,
move
they
closer to
can move
you.
forward unless you wipe out the entire unit.
Yeah.
Awesome mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much fun to play against.
Hmm.
Um, had
And they have
a
dice, right? There's like corn
And
dice that
he's
they roll
got
at the
the
start.
blood
Yeah.
dice that he's
Yeah.
got. So then he's getting like feel no pains, advance in charge as an
Hmm.
army-wide rule.
Yep.
Feel no pain as an army-wide rule. Apparently, if I'll get into it. So we do all that deploying, everything done. We roll to see who's going first. He
You
gets
line
first
up your Jaegers as a sacrifice to corn.
as a sacrifice to Corn to be like, you know what, boys? Godspeed. Just do something for me. Um, Line them all up. We do
Hmm.
our who's going to go first. Doesn't he
Hmm.
get first turn?
Okay.
Doesn't he also have the advance and charge on his
Yep.
army-wide rule?
Yep.
Doesn't he roll a six on his advance?
Yep.
So Angron moves 20 something inches in his opening, and his first thing he does is like go from his deployment zone into my
Into
deployment
yours.
zone,
Yeah.
charges into a hecaton and wipes
Hmm.
it out
Of
instantly.
course. Yeah.
Turn one, I lose a
Yeah.
hecaton. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God,
Oh no. Oh
now
no.
what? So he does that and then consolidates into, I think it was onto my home objective.
Hmm.
Um, and at this point, I'm like, okay. And then he's still got everything else that
Everything
can just
else.
surge forward.
Yeah. It can't move
So
quite as far as
they don't move as
as
far, but
Angron.
his exalted eight bound still move
Hmm.
up to one of the within charging range of
Yep.
something else that's in a no man's land
Hmm.
section, which I had scouted some bikes onto.
Hmm.
So I used my scout moves to be like, okay, here, let's get the Jaegers out. Let's do this. Yeah, they did nothing. They were like the
Hmm.
smallest little speed bump to things.
Right.
Um, so that kind of set the tone for the entire game. It was just like Angron showed up, wreaked some hell.
Hmm.
I eventually kill Angron, get rid of him, and then I'm starting to feel like I can, okay, take care of some stuff. I can turn my guns back onto
Hmm.
some berserks and start wiping them out. Um, Again, dice are not working for me. I'm not able to wipe out the entire unit, so they're getting to move their D6.
Right.
So they're moving their D6 closer or further away or going wherever the hell they want to go. And doesn't he eventually roll the three sixes that he needs to bring Angron back? And Angron
Hmm.
can deep strike in. And so doesn't he come back into my
After
deployment
all that
zone
work. Yeah.
after all that work? And I was like, oh my God, like the deflated feeling.
Yeah.
I've never had it so strong at a tournament before and just been
Hmm.
like, can we just wrap this up? Because this
Yeah.
is just getting like it's getting to be
It's an
ridiculous.
exercise in humiliation at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he turns to me at one point and he's like, this is what world eaters do. And I'm like, thanks for the salt in the wind, man.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, dude.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
thanks. Yeah. Do you want to spit in my eye while we're at this?
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, so yeah, it
Oh,
was an interesting one. He was doing it like jokingly and stuff like
yeah,
that, but I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
my ass is being handed to me. I can't find
It's
this funny
just,
right now.
yeah. You're like, I'm exhausted.
I'm exhausted, I'm tired, and I am losing this badly.
Final score on that one.
Final score, I believe, was 90-30.
Yeah. So her worst score of the tournament, I think.
The very worst of the entire tournament.
Yeah. Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
Obviously a good player, like knew what he was
Really good
doing.
player,
Good,
knew what he
sounds
was
like a good
doing.
list.
Really good list, knew what he was
Hmm.
doing. Yeah, it was just got turn one and then was right in. And he was like, this map is actually perfect for me because it's got
It's,
such straight lines to get
hmm.
people where they have to go.
Yeah, yeah,
And despite being behind things and around, like he can still just, I mean, when he can move all the way across the board into your deployment zone, it doesn't really matter where you've hidden something. He can just
yeah.
like whoop, charge it around. And he was
Hmm.
rolling really well on all
He,
of his
he had
stuff.
some good roles. He
He had
he
some really
ended up
good
being lucky.
rolls. Yeah.
So, overall though, tournament was a positive experience.
Overall, loved the tournament. Had a great
Loved it.
time. Learned
Right.
lots of lessons. It was a great experience. I was
Hmm.
I was kind of talking to like Davey and stuff like that afterwards. I was sending some
Hmm.
messages being like, I may have done piss poor, but you know, I at least learned a lot from this.
So what was the advice that stuck with you the most when you left the tournament?
The uh really be cognizant of, so one of the things Nick was talking to me about was being really cognizant of what you're trading.
Okay.
Um,
What do you mean?
like if you're moving something up, have a reason to have moved it up to do something. And if it's going to be getting killed, like make sure that it's a fair trade-off type of idea. Don't just be handing things away for the sake of it.
Okay.
Um, And in terms of like what he talked about on that one was like when I moved in with my Sagittar, getting out my Berserks and they went into Nurglings. Like, what was
Right,
the point of that? That was a waste of
right.
time,
And
type
it
of thing.
cost you
And it
so
cost
much
me,
points.
yeah, there was 100 points that just vanished off of Nurglings, for God's sakes, because I wanted to take care of them because they can't do anything. Like, what was the point of doing that type of thing? Um, don't move unless you really want to or have to. Like
Hmm.
scouts are something you can do, doesn't mean you have to do it.
Right.
Same with like a reactive move. That was one of the things I'd done in my first game where it was like I didn't think of the reason to reactively move my Jaegers because I thought they were already in a position. But if I had swung them further around, I would have had more control of an objective and forced more movement onto it,
Right.
type
Kind
of
of
thing.
baiting people.
I
Yeah.
I would have been baiting them more. So
Right.
there was like advice like that that I was getting, and I was it was really
Nice.
valuable in that regard. Um, I didn't get outside of that Jaeger's thing being a strange, or sorry, the Berserks and the Sagittar being a strange deployment. There wasn't
Hmm.
really too many that were like your deployment was wrong. It was more like if you're going to move up, remember to move up here. Don't spread out too much, type of thing. Um, be selective, be agile though. So if
Hmm.
all of a sudden he comes in like with Chase, Rodriguez, and that come over into this unit, don't be afraid to move away into another section of the board and start to
Right.
deny or take other things.
Right.
Um, things like that. It's just stuff like that that I really valued.
Hmm.
That was the stuff that I really valued. Nick and I had a great conversation about it, about the army, about remembering some of the stuff. There was at least one of the rules that I had forgotten by the end of, not that it would have changed the game in the World Eaters one,
Hmm.
but like there's a -1 to the wound roll of the opponent if they've got a leader, if the Hearthguard have a leader,
Hmm.
and the toughness,
Oh,
sorry,
it's
if the
like the
strength
Lich
is
Guard.
higher,
Yeah, yeah, the
yeah,
Lich Guard have the same thing. If the strength of the opponent is
is higher
higher
than the
than
toughness.
this unit's toughness, then they're -1 to wound.
Yes, if they're being
Yep.
led by
As
if
long as
they've got a
the
leader.
character attached to the unit.
Right.
Yep.
And it was one
Yep.
of those where I was like, oh, I forgot that in most of the games, type of thing.
Yes, which would have
Um,
kept them alive
which would have
probably
kept
a
them
little bit
alive a little
longer.
bit longer in the World
Hmm.
Eaters part, and probably a little bit longer in even the Blood Angels one.
Hmm.
It wasn't necessarily a problem in the others. But
Well,
I didn't feel like my army did terrible
hmm.
until it didn't feel like at turn three everything falls apart in every game. I didn't
Right.
have that same feeling playing it
That's
this
good.
time. So I feel like I learned something a little bit and that I was able to apply it.
Awesome.
Um, but it was an event filled with phenomenal players.
Right. I think leading up to you were talking about like because it is like ITC ranked or something. I don't know what all the acronyms
Yeah,
stand for, but it's like a proper ranking tournament. Like
yeah,
if people do well at it, it matters.
it does matter. So yeah, that's something that I had heard.
Hmm.
Somebody had said that this was, I think, the last one in like the Toronto area, where you could get bumps in your score to maybe get the golden ticket to go somewhere else. This was kind of like the
Gotcha.
last chance to do it. So a lot of people were there.
Cool.
Yeah,
Well, I'm glad it was a great time. I'm glad it was a learning experience. It's too bad you didn't do better, but
I
you
won
know
a
what?
game. I'm happy with that. I won one.
You won one. And well, so what's your next one? What's the next tournament?
The next tournament, I don't think I have any in November.
Mm,
Um, I don't have any in November. I'm going to be going up to the Lindsay one because I hear great things about Mark's tournaments that he runs up in Lindsay. So
yep.
I'm gonna head up to the Lindsay Open and see how that goes. Um, and then I've got the 2-day January one in the new year at Critical Hit.
Right.
It's a 5 round one, three on day one, two on day two.
Right.
So I'll be trying that one out and see how that goes.
Yeah, I was looking ahead at the next 40K tournaments at Critical Hit, and I'm like, I can't make the November one.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't do that.
unless my plans change last minute, but I don't think they will because I think it's on November 9th. I think it's a Saturday,
I believe
and I
so.
think I'm tied up already for that. So unfortunately, I won't be back to the critical hit scene. I'm toying with the idea of doing that 2 day one in January, the GT, because I haven't done a GT and I really want to try
Hmm.
my hand at it. Um, but I want to give a shout out to I've got some tournaments locally here in Kingston
Yeah,
on the horizon. I'm booked into three
that's
in
awesome.
three different game systems. So November
Nice.
2nd, there's a 2,500 point 3 round Horus Heresy hard with a vengeance. Uh, if you've got a heresy list, you want to come and rock it out. It's a fun group. We're using the SN Battle Reports community rules, so it's a one-page fact just to adjust some of the core rules from the Age of Darkness book. Basically, limiting the number of contemptors people can bring, limiting the artificer armor rolls.
Trying
Our
to cut down
heresy,
on,
yeah, cut down on some of the cheese factor, some
right.
of like what Jordan talked about previous editions having broken mechanics. Heresy sort of kept them in. So we've got some community rules there to adjust those. So that's at Kingston Gaming Nexus, and you can find these tournaments that I'm going to plug in the next 2 seconds all through Kingston's Gaming Nexus
Hmm.
website at kingstonnexus.ca. So there's that one I'm doing on November 2nd. And then December 1st, Warhammer Age of Sigmar 2000 points, Festival of the White Dwarf at Kingston Gaming Nexus. Uh, Run by a great guy, Shannon McLeod. He runs most of the local tournaments for both 40K and AOS.
Hmm.
Um, can't recommend attending those tournaments enough. It's a good community.
Hmm.
It's
It's a fun
front
location. It's a
the
really
fun
fun location.
location. It's downtown Kingston, so walking distance to any number of good lunch places, and they're little three. Usually, it's just 3 game tournaments, so it's a
Hmm.
pretty easy day. And there's parking right next door, so it's easy. And they do draw prizes, which is
Yes.
always fun. It's always fun. And then on December 7th, I've got the 40K Secret Santa at Kingston Nexus,
Mhm. That's a
which
fun game to go to.
it's 40 players. Tickets are selling out like lightning.
Hmm.
And by chances are by the time this podcast goes out, it'll be sold out, even though it's a 40 player event, 40 player event. 1,000 points of silliness. It's supposed to be silliness. It is by and large silliness. I think there was a guy last year who brought just Nurglings, 1,000
Yeah.
points of Nurglings. So there are some like fun lists, and then there'll be some like regular kind of competitive-ish, competitive light kind of lists. But it's a good
Hmm.
time to just come and goof around with a faction you love and units you love. So
Yeah.
I'm signed up for some nonsense. The only
This,
one that I'm sort of competitive about will be the AOS one because this will be my second AOS tournament,
right.
my first one at 2,000 points.
Hmm.
So I'm rolling into it heavy with my Slaves to Darkness, hoping to chew some people up and spit them out.
I'm looking forward to seeing how you do on that one. And unfortunately, I won't be able to make it to the Secret Santa one, but that is a fun event. If
Yeah, the
people are
Secret
up in the
Santa.
area, go to it. It is a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. It's a great group, and it's like $20 to register, and everyone throws in a $10 gift. There's like a
Yep.
Secret Santa swap kind of thing at the end of the tournament. That's a ton of laughs.
Yep.
I mean, Scott knows he went to it with me last year, and we had a
Yeah.
blast at it. It's
Everybody,
a
you
long
can
day. It's 4 games, and
very
it's a
long.
sweat fest.
Yes.
You're wearing shorts in December for sure. Uh,
100%.
but it's good old fashioned fun. So if anyone's in the Kingston region in November, December, definitely those are a few events to definitely check out.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, Scott, I'm glad you had a great time
I'm still in the
and
league. I'm
you
still in the
still
league.
you've secured your
Firmly in
spot.
the league.
You're still the president. Um, yeah, it's exciting to be moving through these like competitive tournament scenes, especially now that you've gotten like a GT under your belt. Like I
It's
am
definitely
jealous. I can't
fun.
wait to do one.
I met some really nice people. Met
Mm,
some people that I've seen online at different things.
yeah.
Scary and that kind of thing. I met him and was talking to him. I believe he actually won the tournament.
Yeah,
Um, really nice guy. He and I were just shooting the shit, waiting to get into the venue
very cool.
on day two and that kind of thing. Yeah, meeting some top players and stuff like that, seeing them later on, and they're always like, "Hey, how you doing? How did it go?
Yeah,
How's your
awesome.
list doing?" Or they would just stop by if they'd finished their game and kind of check in on you type of thing.
Nice.
It was great. It was a really good time. Like, yeah, it made losing and really doing poorly not that bad.
Well, if
Because
you win one of
it
these
was
things, you're out.
yeah,
I'll
well
be doing
that's
the
true.
podcast on my own, or we'll just have to rename it. We'll just call it something else and buy new t-shirts.
I did wear my t-shirt on day one, and at least one other guy saw me, and I guess based on his performance, he was like, "I think I'm an honorary member of the Consolation
Yeah, you're
League."
like, welcome,
I
welcome, brother.
I
Join
said,
us.
"We
Yeah,
admit all."
yeah. We do not discriminate. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll continue to see you guys at the bottom tables in the Consolation League.
So yeah.
Yeah.